let's go to the banks. The banks, they've really been in Nigeria this kind of, I don't want to say naughty, but I've said naughty actually. A lot of Nigerians are not happy and are frustrated right now with what the banks are doing. For me, I get alerts of different charges on my phone. A lot of people will say, why charge me for an ATM card maintenance that is in my wallet? What are you maintaining? See different charges, different charges. Then even the latest, on every P.O.S transaction, I saw your policy or so on P.O.S transaction above 1,000 naira. In fact, a colleague of mine was telling me, was it today, that he did a transaction of 500 naira using the P.O.S, but was charged 50 naira. I was also charged 50 naira. In fact, when they brought the P.O.S, like 1,050 naira, I said, for what? They said, for using the P.O.S. But you want to encourage cashless policy. What's all of that? So those are two questions.
Nancy, first, I don't want you to think I'm trying to defend the banks. Banks incur certain expenses that should be paid for one way or the other, right? The POS machine, that is the gadget being used, costs some money. The ATM machine that is being used costs some money. The infrastructure that will even make the POS and ATM to work, whether it is power, whether it is diesel, right? All of them, they cost money. One way or the other, they have to be paid for. What I would admit is that there may be cases of incessant charges, and we have told our Consumer Protection Department to have their eyes on the ball. Once we receive those kind of complaints, we'll make sure the banks reverse those charges. Now, when you go to issue of, you are paying 50 naira on 1,000 naira item and all that, that is payment for stamp duty. And we have, you see, government, because that money it goes to government. It's part of revenue, raising revenue to fund the operations of government. And what I ask people is this: if government, like a father, needs to fend for the people, build roads, hospitals, or schools, as the case may be, government needs money to fund that. Funding it means either it raises revenue, either through taxes, because your 50 naira is a tax, stamp duty tax, or they take a loan. So government must fund this obligation one way or the other.
So does that mean that Nigerians should overpay? Should we now overpay a lot of charges? And I'm sure that, Governor, you too will be getting such charges from banks.
Well, the point is this.
I am saying it is regrettable, but at least government must raise revenue. Okay, the issue is this: government goes to borrow. You say, even you, Nancy, I'm sure you would have said government is over borrowing. Even though Nigeria's debt to GDP is amongst the lowest in the world at about 2021.
But that's not the issue. The issue is debt to revenue
and
debt to cost.
So which means you agree with me
that the debt to revenue is very low. What does that mean? Your debt service is very high, your revenue is very low. That is why your debt service ratio is high. What does that mean? Raise more revenue. How do you raise more revenue? It has to be through taxes. One of the taxes is stamp duty.
Now, don't you think, Governor, that also one of the parts of raising revenue is perhaps to unleash the different value chains that we have? For example, I know that the Central Bank of Nigeria, you have about 10 commodities. You are looking at maize, cocoa, cassava, rice, tomato, oil palm, poultry, and all of that. For example, to me on the program, I have analyzed several times that it does not make sense for us to export cocoa. Cocoa is selling at $2,523 today, at least for my analysis today, in metric ton. Brent crude is at $62 today. How much sense does it make that you export and you import chocolate? Can we develop the value chain? Shouldn't there be more innovative ways for government to raise revenue?
I agree with you. There should be more innovative ways
to raise revenue. But in any case, we have to raise revenue to fund government's oppression. Now, you go to issue of cocoa. You are also right. that why should we be importing, why should we be exporting raw cocoa instead of exporting processed cocoa into butter, you understand, or produce our own chocolate and then consume the chocolate and export the chocolate. And you're right. But again, that also means that we have to encourage the industries to come alive. When those industries come alive, give them access to good electricity, access to finance, then they can convert their cocoa beans into butter and export, and then pay taxes. I agree with you, but we have to start from somewhere. And I'm going back to where you come from. Government must raise revenue to fund these operations.
Let's come back to the banks. Tell me the progress so far, because you gave the banks a mandate. LDR 60% down to 65% by December to increase lending. What has changed?
See,
May 2019, Monetary Policy Committee met and was analyzing the size of loans in the industry. And the data that we had shows that in the last couple of months, I don't want to say years, banking industry loans has, at best, plateaued. Most of the cases, it was dropping. And monetary policy gave the mandate to the management of the CBN to say, we want you to put in place policies that will catalyze and unleash the lending activity on banks. We found that instead of lending monies to people who badly need money to do business, banks were collecting deposits and putting them on treasury bills and securities. And we said, no, that it can't happen again. When we did an analysis, because you're asking for a scorecard, the total industry loans as at June 2019 was about 15.3 trillion or 15.4 trillion. Right? We moved the loan deposit ratio from 57% to 60%. That is from June to September. By the end of September, right, the loan deposit ratio had moved close to about 39.5 and 59.5, very close to 60, the industry. Okay? And total loans size has increased from about 15.3, 15.4 to about 16.3 trillion. And the banking supervision took time to analyze bank by bank and customer by customer the beneficiaries. And we are going, I'm saying we've seen that it is going into the right purpose, and we are hoping that eventually these things have their lag period, like I said. We will see that this will certainly spur consumer demand and will ultimately help our GDP.
Are you also worried that in as much as you're saying that banks should lend or they should have higher lending, are you also worried about perhaps the NPLs that may be coming? Because you're saying lend to the real sector. Everything is not yet uhuru in the real sector. The environment is still weak. There's still fragile growth. Infrastructure is still a bit weak. Are you also worried, as you're saying, banks lend this money, that NPLs that will come with it? And how will you?
I'm very optimistic that the NPLs will indeed drop.
And it is not, but if you do the mathematics, you may say, okay, yeah, if loans go up, right, the NPL ratio will drop. No, it's not about that. It's about the fact that even we, the central bank, have worked and are collaborating the banks to make sure that the lending practices, right, in Nigeria, or borrowing culture by borrowers meet best practices. When you take a loan from a bank, we insist you must pay. If you don't pay the loan, you will be sanctioned one way or the other. What did you put in place? Well, that's what we said. No, you are free to go to any bank you want, but if you take a loan from bank A and you abandon it and go to bank B, by you taking that loan, you already signed an offer letter that says that if you take the loan, you don't pay, the central bank can scan your name, your BVN, your whatever you have, and collect your money from anywhere you have it. With bank B, will take the money and pay back your loan in bank A. So what does that mean? The only incidents where we could have loans that are not repaid is where you have gone bankrupt, in which case you don't have money anywhere. And where you go bankrupt, we will take all those your assets and you will sell it, so that you move from your big duplex, then you begin to live in a room and parlor, then you'll be sober. That is what says that you are truly bankrupt and that you can't pay your loan. That is how banking and borrowing culture can improve in a country. And that is why I'm telling you, by putting all this in place,
NPLs will go down.
What would you say? Of course, during your 5-year 2019 to 2024 press briefing in June, your second tenure, you did say that you're looking at capitalization for the banks. When is it going to come? Because if you take a look at even at the bank's assets,
Nancy.
about 43 trillion naira, which is still very low.
Yes.
And most of the Nigerian banks are not so much into big ticket transactions.
No, they are. The only thing, though, I will admit with you that there is a need to recapitalize the bank. Right? Time, we have already done the signaling.
So, which means we have prepared the banks. We've told them. So we do expect that they are working towards improving their capitalization. Leave us with a time when we will. But at least nobody is going to say when we do come out with it that they've been taken by surprise. Okay? Now, is this capitalization justifiable? My answer is yes. If you recall, it was in 2004 or 2005 that capitalization for banks was increased to 25 billion. At that time, exchange rate was just barely 100 naira to the dollar. So which means at that time you want a bank, it will be $250 million. Today at exchange rate of 360, insisting that capitalization should be 25, puts it at less than about 70 or 60 million dollars. So for the banks to continue to play the active role they are supposed to be playing in an economy, taking on, according to you, large ticket transactions, there's a need for us to proportionally increase to an amount that is about
or close to $250 billion.
Governor, do you think you're over-regulating the banks?
Because let me tell you this.
Because
when
every
people
day
talk
one
about
circular.
listen,
One circular.
no, it's not about circular.
the Nigerian banking industry is alive today because of its regulation. When the 2008 or 2009 financial crisis hit, what actually insulated the Nigerian banking industry were our prudential ratios, which were some of the best in the world. In the sense that we say, if you take a deposit from a customer, there's a percentage of that deposit that you are going to serialize in cash reserve. If you take a deposit, the percentage of that we must keep in liquidity ratio, so that in case of unexpected shocks, these monies will be there, available for you to pay the depositors. In most countries of the world, there's nothing like CRR, there's not a liquidity ratio. And that is why when you see a bank running into shocks, they go down as if you are dropping a pack of cards. Or is it the capitalization? Capitalization is supposed to provide some kind of shock against loans that are being granted by the banks. I'm saying these have helped, that is regulation, has helped the Nigerian banking industry to be very strong, rather than the adverse where you're saying not regulating the banks naturally will lead to death of the banking industry.
Let's go to another issue. Oil price, $62 as at today. During my analysis, our FX reserves. What if oil price goes down? What happens? Are our reserves safe? Are we secure?
No, I'll try to explain it this way.
Looking at reserve, the adequacy of reserve, one, as well as oil price factor, right? You would have observed that we've done a lot of work trying, at the time when we put in place certain policies that encourage foreign investors to come into Nigeria. Of course, in 2017 as well, we saw uptick in crude prices, and the combination of this actually helped to build our reserve to as high as 45, 46, 47. Okay? In 2018, average crude price was $71 per barrel. But between 2016 and 2019, we've seen U.S. shale production increase from 9 million barrels per day to 12.5 million barrels per day today. The U.S. has also brought in a lot of efficiency in the delivery of its shale. Rather than use vessels, they build pipelines, and that brings their cost down. So that means, well, there are some likely risks that crude prices, or the U.S. will not allow crude prices. Of course, in our lifetime, nobody should ever dream of crude price at $100 a barrel again. Okay? And with what is happening, I can say yes, that we do not expect that crude price will remain very, very favorable. So when you ask me, for 2019, I am saying we'll be lucky to see average crude price at 65. In 2020, I expect it to be lower. Whether the current bench price for our budget at 57, whether it's adequate or not, I'm not going to comment on camera about that. But I have made my views known that there are risks that are ahead of us, particularly as we see the trend in crude prices. If you remember, as reports have it, Iran bombed Saudi oil fields, and there was a drop in global, is it global? Global production by 25%. And you understand? And by that alone, price of crude went up to almost close to very high 70s. High 70s. Yeah. But within 1 week, it dropped again. Yeah. So which means there's a deliberate effort by countries to see that, and I repeat, the era of high prices as a result of shocks, whether it's geopolitical tension or whatever, that the era is gone for good. And that is why, as a country, whether we like it or not, we must begin to think about how to diversify our economy from relying on oil. And it goes to reason that what President Muhammadu Buhari said, that we eat what we produce and produce what we eat, so that we stop importing items that we can produce so as to conserve foreign exchange, becomes very, very apt at this time.
Do you think that Nigeria will be ready if another global recession comes? Because we're seeing global headwinds already. From Europe, on the other side there's Brexit, on the other side Chinese economy is slowing down, India.
See,
would we be ready?
No. You shouldn't be talking about whether Nigerian
economy, as long as we continue to think outside the box, will withstand any headwind. But let me say this. We just came back from the IMF, right? Mm-hmm. And some of the data we saw were very, very downcasting. In the sense that in close to about 80% of countries in the world, global growth came down. US, China, India, Brazil, Russia, everywhere, growth came down. To the extent that IMF has reviewed global growth downward 3 times this year, from 3.6 to 3.4, and for 2019, it's now 3.0. So what am I saying? Whatever you think is affecting Nigeria is coming from what is happening in the global economy, right? And that is what I'm saying. Nigeria, in order to be able to, and really when we come out from these meetings, we tell her what you find as advice is that go back home and see how you can adopt your own homegrown policies that will work well for your country. And that is what I'm saying. This is time for Nigeria to think outside the box, do the unconventional things that people will normally not want to do, but stay within the law, do what is right, but for the good of your country. Create jobs and accelerate growth.
Give me an update on the progress made so far since Nigeria signed a bilateral swap agreement with China. You signed in 2018. I think it's a 3-year renewable contract, 720 billion naira. What's the update now? I know from my analysis too, the renminbi to naira is about 48 naira today or so. What's the progress?
Well, I can tell you that it's working well. It is a facility that has been put in place to support our trade activities. Like you know, China is Nigeria's largest trading partner. The facility is being moderately utilized. We are not just taking it and then just drawing it just because we want to draw it, but we are using it to support trade. We draw, we pay. We draw, we pay. That is what it's meant for, and it is being adequate, and it has helped in helping to also stabilize our foreign exchange markets.
How do you, if we take a look at, because like you said, China, of course, a large trading partner of Nigeria, we still have a lot of large imports from China into the country. And we know that our people are very business-minded and very entrepreneurial people, especially those from the eastern part of the country. Is there any way perhaps to check exploitation or, abuse
Well, that is why we're there as policymakers.
We're doing everything possible to check what you call abuse or exploitation. And we're trying to say it also goes to reason that whether it's China or any country, the issue is that we would insist that we're not going to use foreign exchange to import goods that can be produced in Nigeria. Because by producing them in Nigeria, we create jobs for our people and get our industries back alive again.
Governor, let's talk a bit about financial inclusion. A lot of Nigerians, especially I've been doing this show now for a very long time, and I find out that a lot of Nigerians are not particularly financial literate. From what the central bank wants, that 95% of Nigerians should be financially included by 2024. Yeah, isn't that overly optimistic?
We do not think it's overly
Optimistic, because if you consider the fact that just about 18 months ago, Bill Gates, under the auspices of Bin Laden the Gates, came to Nigeria. Queen Maxima also came. They were not too happy about our rate of financial inclusion. At that time, we were at about 48, 18 months ago. And I told them then that by the end of 2020, we would have ramped up our financial inclusion rate to 80%. Okay? As we speak, the data released by EFINA shows that financial inclusion rate in Nigeria has increased to about 64.5%. So to get to 2020, with all the activities that were put in place, all the actions that were put in place, when policies were put in place for implementation, we believe that 80% in 2020 is achievable. So if we achieve 80% in 2020, so 95% in 2024 should not be impossible.
Let's talk about the state of microfinance banks in Nigeria. There's a NISA microfinance bank now, which is a national microfinance bank. I got talking, was it 2 weeks ago, at the African Economic Congress with the National Microfinance Bank, NISA. Speak to Nigerians more about that. And perhaps wouldn't there be a death of the microfinance banks that we have already?
No. See, the issue is this. We do not
expect that the establishment of a universal microfinance bank will result in the death of the existing microfinance bank. But in any case, the Naira Microfinance Bank is there to complement, just as a microfinance bank, to complement the activities of existing microfinance institutions, and also create what we call a competitive landscape between the microfinance institutions. Listen, today, the people who are vulnerable, the weak in the village, in our villages, that the microfinance banks are supposed to be serving, are paying as high as 60% per annum. They pay interest rate on flat basis. I hear of what? 6% flat, which is 72% per annum. I hear of 5% flat, which is 60% per annum. I don't even know how those people in the villages can afford those 5, 6, 7% flat. Do you understand? And then those in the urban centers are paying 21% per annum, even 25% per annum. 21% per annum comes to less than 2% flat. So we need to, the National Microfinance Bank has been created as an institution that would make small and medium enterprise loans available at single-digit rates, so they can provide a competitive landscape for people in the rural areas. That's all. So I should think that it is a good thing that we're doing.
What is your outlook for the Naira moving forward? Because the Naira oscillates between 305, and why is there this multiple exchange?
No.
305,
Naira,
360,
listen,
360 to I and E.
No, I would disagree with you.
I disagree with you, Nancy. There's hardly any transaction that is done at 305 today. And but in terms of the landscape for the Naira, we are trying as much as possible to keep the exchange rate stable. Because it is only under a stable exchange rate arrangement that businesses can plan and people can see. And what can guarantee a stable exchange rate are two for Nigeria: a good oil price and a stable reserve, which I would imagine we have at this time. So I am optimistic that we will continue to sustain our stable exchange rate regime right now.
Okay, just as we round up the interview, what is the major challenge of the central bank at this time as an institution?
See, let me tell you that.
And I think I told you this the last interview, and you asked the question, what keeps me awake? Yeah. And I repeat, what keeps me awake today is the fact that we need to create jobs in our country. When I look at young people that either come out of school, can't find jobs, and we are here as policymakers, we can't do something either to give them jobs or create an environment, a platform for them to become job creators, in which case they become entrepreneurs and create jobs for themselves and other people. It keeps me awake. And that we don't have a choice as policymakers to do everything possible to create jobs or create an enabling environment for these young people to become entrepreneurs, right? Create jobs for themselves and other people. Because if we do not do so, then we are still taking a very big risk of our lives, because our level of insecurity, I doubt whether it will come down if we do not do what I'm saying now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Governor, for this time. I wish you well. Not just you, I also wish the Central Bank of Nigeria well.
I wish Nigeria well.
I wish Nigeria well. So
Thank
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.